Welcome to And It's Live, the podcast which dives deep into football's most iconic seasons, stories, and what ifs. If you love football, history, tactics, and nostalgia, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and drop us a like on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Hello and welcome to the 75th and final full episode of the main event, the history of the Champions League 1992 to 2013-14, where we bid it farewell. We're in the final stages of 13-14. Thank you for making it all the way to here. David Edgar's here. How are we doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, sit down, folks. Dust off your copy of Those Were the Days by Mary Hopkin and prepare to sit on the carpet and tell sad tales of a Champions League show that has come to its finale.
Adam's here as well. How are we?
We are good, yes. Happy to be here. Also excited for what comes next, as we probably are boring people talking about now. But yes, very much happy to get this through. It has been a ridiculous amount of work hours rewatching games, but I've loved the vast majority of it. So yeah.
Anything not involving Juventus, Bayern or Real Madrid, really, you've enjoyed?
In an 18 months or so where Rangers have been largely rubbish, it's been nice to look back and enjoy some good football and figure things out. And also, I like sorting my memories out. Is that a weird thing to say? So here's what I think about this definitively now that I'm as
challenging your received wisdom. That's what you've done, yes.
Now that I'm as close to growing up as I'm ever going to be, here are my complete thoughts on the Champions League.
It's been a pleasure. Anyway, let's wrap it up. I love it. Interesting, such a stretchy word, isn't it, in the context of football matches? But decent semi-finals, very different semi-finals, and kind of fitting that Real Madrid and Bayern Munich come up against one another in a semi-final in our final season that we're doing, because it's been such a fixture, Adam, of right throughout this show, two giant clubs who have given some real tasty battles, especially around the turn of the century. Here they are again. Pep Guardiola, of course, in charge of Bayern Munich, returning to the Bernabeu, where he's had a lot of success, not always, but certainly a lot of nice evenings. Karim Benzema had the only goal in Madrid. So KJ, balance, everything set up perfectly for this do-or-die clash in Munich, and nobody saw what came coming. 4-0 to Real Madrid. Sergio Ramos, we will talk about him later for exactly the same reasons. Bit of a caricature, of course, in his later years. What a header of a football he was. These goals are stunning, especially the first one. The delivery from Luka Modric as well is perfect. You can't stop Ronaldo getting in on the act, and he gets one before half-time, and then to really wrap it up. An incredible night, Adam, for all the shows that we've done, for all the games that we've touched on. Of course, there's been shocks. Of course, there's been surprises. I don't know if any really register just in terms of the size, because Pep Guardiola teams do lose, like every manager's side do from time to time, but there's always a reason, there's always an excuse, there's always a volcano, or there's some chicanery going on. They don't get fucking eviscerated the way they did here.
Madrid again, Ancelotti, we sort of mentioned at the tail end of last year, this sort of maturity piece, he kind of, I don't think they would ever admit it, but for me, he stole a little bit of Atletico in terms of what they do in both these legs. I would suggest it is a 4-3-3, certainly the first leg, obviously a lot cagier. It is a 4-3-3 formation, absolutely, but discipline, I think, out of possession was something that I found really interesting, because this midfield three that he had been playing, I had thought at the time they're going to get battered against a big team, should I say, or against a team that knows how to play. Great players, 100% great players, but Luka Modric, Xavi Alonso and Angel Di Maria as a midfield three is all very technical and nice. Don't really say most of it has a lot of physicality, although I think Di Maria was underrated in that, and underrated in terms of what he could do, but it's not all win and all that sort of stuff. Not even in the way that, certainly not in the way that Bayern Munich had with your guys like Schweinsteiger, etc. in there. So I don't know if I probably thought it in this game, to be fair, because Philip Lam, we mentioned there, you got Schweinsteiger, you got Toni Kroos. I kind of thought, even though they're at home, I wonder how that's going to go. You've got the flying wingers for Bayern as well that we've spoken about a bit, and you've also got two flying fullbacks, which Madrid didn't really have. Dani Carvajal would get forward. Fabio Quintrao was decent, solid, tidy enough. Don't think he was very much up and down from what I really remember, but he was decent on the ball. So I kind of thought it was all set up for that, but Madrid just turned it on its head completely, just minimised what Bayern were trying to do positionally by just defending. playing absolutely high, but just not allowing them really anything to do in the first leg. No away goal, I think, and the goal obviously is pretty much like a 2-0 as far as Madrid are concerned. And then second leg, Pep has spoken a bit about that need to add more verticality and width when he moved from Barcelona to Bayern. That was the thing that he wanted to adapt. He wanted to add positional play into the Bundesliga and into Bayern Munich, which wasn't really something that had happened there, but he didn't want to just go in and create a Barcelona. He wanted to create this sort of vertical transitions, making use of the wingers, etc. I don't think he got the balance right here. That might be, I don't think that's really, I think that's a pretty obvious point, should I say, because they attacked aggressively to try and get this goal. They had huge amounts of possession. The fullbacks were high. They tried to maintain the width. But all this did was give Madrid lots of space in transition to hit players that were very good in transition. Ronaldo, Benzema, Bale, you mentioned Di Maria, able to get up and support. It just was the worst of tiki-taka. Pep did call this later on biggest tactical failure. I think probably to that point, it was probably right. I think he's had more than a few of them in the knockout stages or towards the end of stages in the Champions League since then. But I think he just never got the balance right. There wasn't enough. He didn't leave enough defensively because he was focused on trying to go and win the game essentially and get through. And I think he maybe misjudged the midfield, tried to control too much of the ball and got hit in the counter-attack. So it was stunning. I remember being still really surprised about it at the time, but it was one of those moments which we see a lot of, the whole Barcelona PSG thing as well. It was one of those, you're like, Jesus, did not expect this to be coming, and it just showed how, I think how chaotic's the wrong word. Is it chaotic? I'm not sure. The knockout rounds probably are becoming more chaotic when everyone's telling us football's so prescriptive nowadays. And
No, I think
without question, you see, we're obviously not going to cover them on this show, but it gets to a stage very quickly where every year, usually involving Paris Saint-Germain and or Barcelona, there is a complete utter, it just, and Spurs and Ajax as well, just utter nonsense from positions that hitherto would have been dead. The game would have been, the tie would have been.
I just find it really funny because we're told now everything's robotic and prescriptive and everybody knows what they're going to do. And I do kind of agree with that. I think it has gone too far that way, potentially in league football. But
I think that I wonder if that's what people mean, because I don't think they are watching the games. They can't be, because we're just seeing far too many flips, huge flips. Whereas it's the concentration of power within league football, within the Champions League, how many teams outside of 4 or 5 can realistically win it. All those kind of things I can understand feeding into a narrative of predictability and staleness, and I'm shut out by it. It's too cold, and it just doesn't bear any resemblance to Champions League knockout football, which for the past 10 years, if you are, and I'm going to come to a point when we get to Atletico and Chelsea in a minute, but if you, as a neutral, you're sitting down and want to watch utter chaos, you get it every year, almost guaranteed, in a way that you get different kinds of entertainment in the period that we've covered. But we're starting to see something kind of crazy. I'll open this up to both of you. Am I stretching here, Adam? Real Madrid look happy. The players look happy. Mourinho's away, and Ancelotti, just the complete, you talked about being the antidote to that, the completely different kind of character, a player's manager, a cuddle, a nudge, allowing freedom. But then you talked about that discipline, that structure, a wee bit more like Atleti. Is this not just the groundwork that Mourinho's, those lessons don't get forgotten, they don't get ripped up, but with a happier face, far better man management, expressing where they can in points and games, but all that groundwork that they've done, that discipline that they've done, that shape work that they've done hasn't been forgotten? Is this just not actually the perfect guy to replace Mourinho with after he's done 3 years of batter the basics? Because Real Madrid are going to win this quite a fair bit over the next few years.
I agree. I guess it can go either way though, right? Because you've got the whole Chelsea analogy as well that we spoke about, where the players were there and the manager changed all the time, and sometimes it was to the detriment and sometimes it was to the benefit. Overall, I think this would be an example where we see the benefit. It would be interesting. I guess it would get a bit, it would get a bit difficult later on when Zidane comes in and they have all that crazy success. But I wonder if you were to sit down some of those players honestly and say, which, at their best, which of those 3 managers did you enjoy playing for the most? Because I would still probably say they might go Mourinho if you take out the trophies and you take out everything. Just at the peak that they were in when we spoke about it, at that peak, for however long it is, say it's just a season. If you were to take a season in isolation, what was your season where you felt the whole club was in tune, everything was set up for what you wanted to do? There might have been more success later. you might have thought Ancelotti was a better person. I don't think that's really up for debate.
No, it's
But who pummel them into submission to then get the benefit of it, bring in a couple of players that can allow you to do what you need to do, and more importantly, be in tune with how football is changing, which is one thing Ancelotti has always been a master of, and adding that on. So I think that's a good call.
So David, then Chelsea's to win in 2012, maybe one is Zidane's. They're really Jose's. That's him up to 5.
You and me aren't going to argue against that, are we? And don't forget all the charity shields as well. But I think sometimes we are in danger a little bit because he isn't such a limelight hogger of almost treating Carlo Ancelotti like a big fun Club 18 to 30 rep who corrals unruly mobs into various places to have a good time. I think there's more to him than that. What he is very good at getting players to want to deliver for him, which Mourinho was, and I would argue less so as he gets older, as he gets a bit grumpier. But Ancelotti is very good at doing it. What his genius is, Martyn, is that if he doesn't feel the need to show off, and he doesn't feel the need to walk into a club and almost for the sake of it rip stuff up and start again. And we have a good example of that, don't we, in the UK recently with Arne Slot, who came in and tweaked and changed, but it didn't need completely torn up. So he
meaningful tweaks,
important. No, that
changes
for the sake of it. And look, there are times you go into a job and the dressing room needs fumigated and you've got to start again, and that's a different thing. But it's Real Madrid. There's a winning mentality. There's a winning culture, almost by definition, in the walls of the building. So you come in and you have to say, right, well, why was this squad underperforming last night or last season? Why didn't it do the things that on paper it should be capable of? And he's very good at that. He's very good at assessing and then getting people to believe in what his vision is, what he wants them to do, and getting them to share that vision, I think, is a key thing as well. But you're absolutely right in terms of Jose has put down. Jose was no disaster at Real Madrid. Let's also not overegg that particular pudding. It didn't work to a degree that many expected or felt it would, or certainly hoped it would. But they were strong, didn't they? Win the title with record points or something. It was against a very good Barcelona side, let's not forget, and a growing Atleti side. But he's very good at looking at a squad and harnessing its best abilities, getting people to deliver of their best. And
I've said this so often. He's a manager where others coach. He gets coaches in to assessing exactly this. And whatever club he goes to, whatever situation he goes back to a club, I think he does the same kind of thing. He just says, what do we need here? How best to do it? What they have, instead of having a huge overall vision that he will not kind of deviate from. I think he's shown that adaptability. I think he probably is the most adaptable manager over the piece that we've talked about, just simply because of his longevity. But he is an exceptional people person. And he does tend to take over very talented squads that have just fallen out with the grumpy manager who made them do things they didn't want to do, but actually for the best. And they'll certainly reap those rewards. Speaking of Jose, Chelsea faced Atlético Madrid, of course, in the other semi-final. First leg in Madrid, 0-0, as many would have predicted. Chelsea fans serenading Diego Costa that night because it was very obvious that he was going to Stamford Bridge that summer, which of course he would do. It wasn't the best game. That is an understatement. But I will make this point. I made it in other shows. I've made it in one book, and I will continue to make it. This, I think, is a departure point for me as a neutral. And it's probably an interesting point that we are finishing here, because football is at this competition. Elite level football is maybe going to change into something else. This is the first time that I can remember the reaction to a game from neutrals being so visceral. Not that, that was a shit game, did you catch that yet? It was shite, it was pretty boring. People have always said that, there's nothing new there, and that's fine. But people felt shortchanged. People were furious that it was a dull game, that nothing much happened, and that they were somehow entitled to something more. They were entitled to more goals. They were entitled to what they consider entertainment, and they had failed to deliver, even though they're not important. I'm not important. Chelsea and Atletico Madrid fans are the only fans that are really important. The players, obviously, the most important parts of the whole thing. And for those fans, as we know, sitting through a 0-0 semi-final first leg, it's as tense as all hell. And try telling anyone there that they were bored, because anything can happen that's going to be seismic because the margins are so slim. But I remember at the time, and certainly looking back for a few bits and pieces, Twitter being really now in its stride. people almost complaining, almost wanting money back, as if they'd gone to the theatre, as I said before, to see Hamilton and finding out that people couldn't rap. That's
Or
not what
finding out it was a
football.
musical, full stop, as some
Yeah,
of us have
well,
done.
that's that. Yes, indeed. That's not what sport is. And, well, it hasn't been, but this is where it's
No,
morphing
yes,
into. And I think we're going to
exactly.
start seeing these semi-finals that are utterly hectic, utterly chaotic. And I think this feels like a departure point. Before then, adults understood that they were watching athletes take part in a sporting contest and were voluntarily observing that. And now they're saying that this is a disgrace, that it was so boring. What did
Because
they also from
no,
and these two sides in a first leg?
you do need to be a bit canny about it. This is in part due to the fact that football has been increasingly marketed, though, Martyn, as entertainment. And the Champions League, which these stages will not contain a lot of teams other than from an elite group, these are marketed to you as a neutral, as being high stakes,
And
high
you're paying for
glamour
it.
entertainment, and you're paying for it. That's another thing. If these games were still on ITV, I don't have an awful lot of sympathy if you watch the game on a Fire Stick and then say that was rubbish, because it hasn't cost you much and you've chosen to spend the time. And you're right, look, you can be disappointed in a game. I think it's fair. We all have been, I'm sure, as neutrals really look forward to a match and it's failed to deliver. But I think the reason that the anger comes in is that you are sold it in the same way that you're sold a cinema ticket. For these games anyway, it's massive, it's colourful, it's spectacle. You have to be there, the whole world is watching, all of these things. The idea, though, that a game of football is guaranteed to entertain, that's not the case. And I would argue, by the way, in the same way that a film isn't guaranteed to entertain and you're not due your money back if you go to the cinema and you don't like it. That can happen. That's just subjective
But
choice.
its purpose, but the artistic purpose of a movie is to entertain or move or make you
I
laugh or
agree with
whatever.
that,
The
but then why
point of
is the
football is for
Champions League?
someone to move to the next round and to win
Why is
the
there
big
so much
cup.
money for winning it, though? Where does that money come from?
It comes from people who are paying to watch it, but people
It
before.
doesn't come from.
My point being
You're
that
coming.
people
You're being very
before.
Corinthian here. You're jumpers for goalposting me here.
No, I'm absolutely not.
You
No, I'm
are.
not.
You are.
Before then, people paid for it, understanding that they were watching the spectacle of contest.
Who
Who is going to win?
who paid for it? Who in the apart from who was in the ground? Who paid for it in the old days?
I'm not.
When I watched Arsenal in the Winners' Cup run of 94-95, when they weren't the most entertaining side, it was on terrestrial television, which I didn't pay for. It wasn't even on the BBC where I pay a license fee. It was on terrestrial. It didn't cost me. If it was rubbish, that was fine. It was entirely. They are now asking specifically. Let's not forget that you pay for this product specifically for this.
No, I get the payment thing, and I understand why people. I understand why it's changed. I guess the point being the departure is that people were paying for this for a long time. Been paying for the Premier League for 20 years, for example, and Sky have had exclusive rights to the Champions League for 10. So people understand the concept of subscription television, and pay-per-view sport is nothing new. I'm just making the point that I think previous generations understood what they were paying for. They were observing that, as I said, the spectacle of contest. Who is going to win? Because it's unknown who's going to win. And if a close game is on the edge, that's fine. But it wasn't. It was about the superficiality rather than, I think, the purpose, which is who's going to win the semi-final, who's going to win this big cup, this important prize. That's why it's relevant. The Champions League winner is relevant because who's the best club in Europe, who's the best team in Europe this season. And that's why people used to tune in to sport. But it was boring. Not really understanding that the first leg of a hugely important semi-final is going to be tight. And that's the departure. That simply an observation. It's not for me, but it's simply an observation that there is now a more vocal demand for any kind of caginess, any kind of caution to be thrown out because, don't have an interest in either side, want to see 3 goals at least a game.
And you're correct on that last point, right? And I think there are a multitude of reasons for that. First of all, I would argue strongly, yes, the marketing is such that you will be entertained. That's what's put to you forward. Secondly, the fact is that teams now do, because of this, have access to resources that in theory should allow them to build teams capable of playing this exciting football. This is not like watching an FA Cup first round tie. You would expect quality players to be able to deliver quality performances. Although again, then it's subjective. If a defender plays very well, you got a quality performance, which wasn't necessarily the one you wanted to see. This comes to something that you hang on about, which is the way that people consume football nowadays, Martin. And it is happening here by this stage. It wasn't 10 years before, but it is now. That a lot of people do not watch football matches other than their own side in their entirety, except for occasional big, in inverted commas, matches, right? For a number of reasons. One of which is that we have far more entertainment options now, of course, than we did back then. For goodness sake, we have a little screen in our hands all the time in case the big screen in the corner doesn't keep us fully engaged, right? That's how much the entertainment landscape has shifted. And secondly, I think on this point, because people don't watch football matches in their entirety anymore, they watch it in clip form or at best highlight form. That's their chosen way of watching it, which are always incident packed. There's always something going to happen. If you watch Match of the Day, you're going to get goals, aren't you? You're not going to see 7-0 nils on an average Match of the Day. It isn't going to happen. So things will happen. Then when they come to watch a full match, a 90-minute match, they're out of practice in that. And we've seen this with our own side. I've left, having watched my own team at the stadium, and people saying to me, "That was rubbish. We didn't create a chance." And I'll go, "Well, hang on. We created 2, 3. We had 9 chances and scored 2. 9 chances. What's that?" And it's because they're not used to watching all the rest of it. Ball going out for a throw in, the ball being kept in a corner, working possession. They're not used to that. So I think that it's due to that as well. That when you think about it, if you only ever watch trailers for movies, you would find the character development bits in an actual movie a bit jarring. And that is, I think, what has increasingly happened. People have a short attention span. You can blame social media for it. I think it's a legit argument. People have short attention spans and they want to be grabbed. And when they sit down to watch a so-called bigger match, how often do you hear the Super Sunday match get pilloried? I remember there was a game you and I watched for our other show on the Heartland Network, Seagulls, which is an English Premiership show. And you and I loved it. I think it was an Arsenal-Liverpool game, maybe, something like it. It was a big one. And it was really tense. And two sides that were just really respectful of each other, but they were going at it. They were trying to win. But it wasn't end-to-end stuff, loads of goal shots and goal. But you and I loved it because we were like, this is what it should be. It's a top-of-the-table clash. And the reaction to it was boring, typical. Don't know why I wasted my Sunday afternoon watching that. And it is
because it's called
they are tuning in the way that you tune in for a big movie. That's what they're tuning in for. And they don't watch football that regularly. They watch it, as I say, in clip highlight form. And then when they come to the reality of it, which is in this big... If you sat and watched the highlights of these two games 5 minutes on YouTube, you'd come away thinking this was a really super exciting tie. Because you'd feel the tension from the first leg when a chance gets missed, and you'd feel the emotion in the second leg. But if you watch the full 3 hours, I think a two-legged semi-final, I think of it like a book, and you don't get explosions and car chases in the opening chapters. Sometimes they don't make a lot of sense because they're set in the story.
You do, baby. You do now, and that is the norm now. It really is. And that's just the way the game's going, and it's not dreadful for it. Adam, the second leg, though, there were goals, for all the family. Children entertained. Fernando Torres put Chelsea ahead. No celebration, of course. An Atleti legend. If Chelsea had maybe got to half-time with that 1-0, the game could have maybe gone a different route. They conceded right on the stroke by Adrian. It was sloppy at the back post, couldn't really deal with it. And no one marking him. He takes it very well. And then I just think Atletico Madrid just have a sense that this really is their season, and they do up gears. There is a penalty that Solomon Kalou crashes into someone right on the edge of the box, but I think it is, and Diego Costa signs off well before Turan, I think it is, takes the tie away. And just a team that just felt destiny was within their grasp, I think. They really are on a roll here.
Yes, although I would argue it was all set up for Chelsea when Torres scores, because it was a bit scrappy. I think Mourinho said the first leg they played to win and we played for the result. So I think he wanted to get out and take them back to Stamford Bridge as a 0-0, as you would expect. They didn't let Atletico do what Atletico do. They didn't attack them, basically. They just stayed, for want of a better word. They tucked their fullbacks in. They had John Obi Mikel and Ramirez playing in the middle. Just containment, really. 0-0, get me out. Hazard wasn't playing as well. So I think that goal coming, I always talk about, before half-time, and I'll leave it flexible, but 10 minutes before half-time, like you said, no celebration, but you're like, let's all set up, and then great goal, nice cutback, great goal, and that kills it, I think, or certainly kills the plan and kills them because, again, away goal vibe. Well, actually, we've got two now. Get up is the thing. So I don't, by any stretch of the imagination, think that Chelsea deserved it, and I don't think Chelsea were close or anything, but there's just that wee period there where you think we've kept ourselves in it. We've now got that little bit of luck. I'm thinking in my head, well, Atletico Madrid can contain, but so can Chelsea at this stage, so can Mourinho. And it's a wee decisive moment, and then they go and show the energy. I think, understandably, because Mourinho then can't be compact. He has to open up, and he can't open up, as we know by this stage in his life. So he tries to go for the win. He puts his fullbacks a little bit higher. He presses more, opens up space between the lines. You've got the best team in the world at capitalising on space, counters, transitions at this stage. So that goal for Juan Fran, was it Juan Fran? That goal for Juan Fran before half time, it wasn't Juan Fran, it was Adrian. Sorry.
Adrian.
Kills it, he turns it into Madrid's game in an instant when it had been Chelsea's game for pretty much 75% of the whole tie. And I just find that fascinating that those things can happen. Diego Costa I thought was terrific. Second half, led the line brilliantly, won the penalty, I think, didn't he? Just a brilliant goal as well, the penalty, brilliant finish. Arda Turan is maybe someone that we've not spoken about as well, but when you talk about the kind of compactness and physicality, etc., that Madrid have, and I mentioned they've got Koke and they've got Arda Turan as two very good ball players. Great delivery, scores the clincher, I guess, if you want to call it that, or scores the one that puts them way beyond doubt. Keeps the ball really well, which again in this system you need one or two that can do that. So fascinating with this one. That switch that Mourinho had to do from reactive and destroying to open up was just the worst team to have to do it against, and second half they looked a completely different prospect because of that for me.
All right, we've had the same teams from the same country before, all Spanish in 2000, all Italian in 2003, all English 2008, and all German just the season before. And this is the first time we've had two teams from the same city, of course, in the final, the two Madrid teams in Lisbon for the Champions League final 2014. Atletico Madrid had one.
Can I just have one of my moans? Sorry, I'm genuinely sorry there to have interrupted you, but can I just get in one last moan?
Sure.
About something in modern football that I hate a lot of the pantomimes in modern football. A wider societal problem, I'm sure. But every year when something like this happens, and it's happened reasonably regularly the last few years, why don't they just play the final in Madrid? Well, because they can't. Because it hasn't been organised, and the host city has been chosen and spent a lot of money on it, and people have made travelling arrangements, and why don't you just fuck off? And it gets on my tits something constant, because it happens a lot. Oh, why don't they just play it a bit nearer? Why don't they just leave it? You're right, mate, let's just hire a stadium on the Monday before the game and go, and it's that easy. You just drop people. Doddle. Sorry, it gets my blood up.
There's quite a few ticketing moans that have, or again, people's understanding of what the final should look like is production values rather than anything to do with the sport. It's wild. So Atleti won the title the week before. Adam, Diego Costa was injured in that match. He had a hamstring injury, I think horse placenta and all sorts of things were in the mix this week.
I feel like Magat with his cheese.
Yeah, he was named in the starting lineup because, of course, 9 minutes he would last, of course. A lot of missing players, I suppose. We mentioned Turan there. He misses out. He's injured here. Xavi Alonso is suspended. Sami Khedira is going to come in for him. Pepe doesn't start. Rafa Varane, young Rafa Varane, starts ahead of him. That front three of Real Madrid, Bale, Ronaldo and Benzema, all doubts that week. All start, all play. So there is just this, I don't know, sense of tiredness for a long La Liga season where the two of them with Barcelona have been battling that out on a weekly basis. No time really to take the foot off the gas. Both involved in quarterfinals of varying degrees of tension, but it still takes it out of you. And I remember just the lead up to that final, just a sense of weariness about the whole affair, because the talk was about who will miss. And I think that's perfectly understandable. And players thinking, we've got to go to Brazil soon for a World Cup. That's in the ether as well. There's just this kind of sense that we're not getting a final with these two sides in their absolute best form.
Yeah, and Costa goes off really early as well, doesn't he? So it's
7 minutes. He's never fit. But then, Martin, how often do we see this? Harry Kane in the Champions League final.
Because it might work for
You never
us.
know. We need him there. Psychologically, he's got to be there. And as a neutral again, and it's easier for us out with the bubble, you say, it won't work, he'll go off injured. And in Kane's case, he usually does his very best to hang about because he's a trooper, but he can't run. And in Costa's case, you saw him in the warm-up and you're like, that boy, he's not fit. And I bet you Chelsea were delighted sitting watching this to see him line up with everything all arranged and agreed. But 7 minutes he lasts. And for me, I think you just name it the day before, or rather tell people the day before so it's out there and it's done. And then your team as well and adapt to it. But can anyone just think offhand, maybe the listeners can, of a time where it has worked? And I'm not talking about a sub, someone who has been put on the bench unfit. Our club have a very famous example in a cup final with Ali McCoist coming off the bench, no one there fit and scoring the winner. But I'm talking about we will start this key important player for us. And it's worked, and they've been absolutely superb in a huge match like this, like a cup final. I can't think offhand of too many. I can think offhand of a few where they've limped off because they weren't fit. And it would be lovely and heroic in Hollywood if his hamstring held up because it was a... But I don't think his hamstring knew that this was a really important game and unfortunately remained doggedly unserviceable. But to me, it just boosts the opponents. You burn a sub, and the opponent gets this boost. I don't get it. It's a comfort blanket, and I think you need to be a bit more adult about the situation.
I think if Horse Placenta is involved, you probably just need to say, no, it's not going to work for us here, pal. Not the best final, probably for that reason. I think Gareth Bale had a good chance around half an hour that he missed. But then Atletico again, just this feeling of destiny, Davey, it just continues because they go ahead not long after that. Diego Godin, again, who very much relishing the upcoming World Cup as well, does get to it. It's a bit of a shambles. Not Casillas' greatest moment, I don't think, either. And they have got what they had prized more than anything else, a lead.
And they were the type of side that you felt, oh, that's going to be very difficult now to overcome. Because you mentioned their sense of destiny, it can carry you a long way sometimes if everyone's truly believing in it, and you're a good side, which they were. But when they took the lead, it had the feeling of a game that one goal might decide pretty early on. And therefore, when they got it, and we know how excellent they are defensively, and also they've won the league the week before, there is no sense of inferiority here coming up against Real Madrid. And I genuinely don't think it's a sense of inferiority that costs them here. I thought at the time, live, I thought that will more than likely be that, because I just felt that Atleti would be so able to sit in against a side who were superb on the counter. Well, you're not going to get any space now to do that. It's not going to happen now. And they've got something to hold on to. And this Atleti side were like a dog with a bone when they had that.
They've done it. They've done it in the quarterfinal, right?
And they did it domestically a few times as well, that they get themselves into this position and then they're very comfortable, experienced and good at seeing it out. So at that point, yes, and I was beginning to think, won the league last week, they knocked out Barcelona, they're about to beat Real Madrid. This is a celestial script that's been written for them. It's one of those years, and I was wrong.
Ancelotti goes, half an hour to go. Contral and Khedira come off. Marcelo and Isco go on. Adam, they pummel them. They just batter Athletic, but they seem like they're just going to see it out. Quite happy to try and see it out. As we've said, they've done it before. And finally, the 93rd minute, brilliant corner. And finally, Ramos gets a bit of space. And we've talked about his heading prowess in that semi-final. It's another brilliant headed goal. And it takes it into extra time. But again, I wonder if they're up against any other side holding on to this lead, do they probably do it? Is there something in the back of their mind that big brother thing, it will just happen because they always bloody do? I wonder if that's a factor in that. But take nothing away from Ramos. He was just so good at that. And Modric.
Yes, a couple of points on this one for me in terms of, I keep saying that, Real Madrid. No Xabi Alonso works for me in this game because you're going to have all the ball anyway. So there's no need for someone who's, or not that there's no need, but there's limited need for someone who can take the ball under pressure, all that sort of stuff there. So having Khedira there, I think, and Modric, I can't remember exactly when the sort of shift happens from floaty attacking midfielder to deep line position midfielder. It would be great if this was the exact game that it happens, but I don't know if it was. But he does certainly take on a little bit more of those playmaking responsibilities, I think, because Xavi Alonso's not there. But I think what it does as well, and even when Isco and Marcelo come on, I think it frees up Di Maria, because we know who was fantastic, I think, certainly towards the latter half of the game, but we know what Atletico are going to do. We know they're going to sit deep and then they're going to press the life out of you to win the ball back. Di Maria is essentially unpressable, if that is a word, because he's just an absolute ball of energy, will be so comfortable taking the ball, physical for someone who's so small, not big physical strength, all that sort of stuff, but robust. So they've got a bit of a unicorn there, if you want to call it that, a bit of an outball that's not really an outball that they can use. The fact that Atletico lost their outball after 9 minutes and they're trying to pump balls up to David Villa, who's been marked by Rafa, isn't ideal for them either. So they've got no outball there. So I think just a couple of little things there that actually, you look at Xavi Alonso not playing, you think, oh God, I don't think that really causes the goal or anything like that. A great ball from Modric and fantastic header from Sergio Ramos. And I think that's where the moments factor comes in that you're speaking about, that they'll just keep going and maybe there is that psychological piece. They were knackered. You mentioned at the start, no Costa, no release valve. Atletico Madrid players looked absolutely shot. And I think when you've got the energy coming off the bench of some of the guys that Madrid had, Marcelo coming on to add a different dimension to what Contrao does, Di Maria just like a Duracell bunny, I do think it's easy to say it was only a matter of time, but in extra time. I remember watching it, like I said, in a bar in Sorrento and thought Atletico Madrid were going to do it. And then as soon as that goal goes in, I was like, well, that's it. They're done. They're going to hammer them in extra time. And they did.
I know you love my bits of trivia, and it's the last full show, so here's my last one. This is the 7th Champions League final to go to extra time. What was special about this one that the other 6 did not have?
I don't know.
It can't be as obvious as extra time.
No, 7 Champions League finals went to extra time, but what happened here that did not happen in the previous 6?
Both teams
was won by more than one goal?
No, it didn't need penalties. All the other 6, if it went to extra
really?
time,
Wow.
all went to penalty kicks. This one didn't, and it should be no surprise because there were no substitutions left by extra time. Later rules would, I think, allow you for anyone getting into extra time. That had been done, so it's the same players.
There was one. I want to take the shine off you. There was one penalty, but
come to that. Did not need a penalty competition, trademark Barry Davis. But it is ragged as all hell, and understandably so. Atleti are the most ragged, and it's Di Maria, Adam, really, who creates the key moment down that left-hand side, works so well to get any position, gets his shot away, Courtois saves, but not enough. The ball spins up in the air, and it's Gareth Bale, of whom there was still a bit of doubt, I think, with the Madrid fans and press, even though he had that moment in the Copa del Rey. Here he is, nodding home to "It felt settle it." There would be a couple more. Marcelo's goal is every inch the tired kind of game that we're talking about. Courtois saves that the next week, never mind the next season. And then there's a penalty. And Ronaldo, who has scored about 1 billion goals, I think, in the Champions League this season, finally gets his other one top off. This is 120th minute, team 3-1 up. There is no chance that this penalty means anything to the outcome of the game. But as David and I have discussed, that's nothing to do with anything. It is about the production, and it's about him, Apaf, abs, and everything. And that's it. Finally, this 10th big one arrives, Adam. And it weighed heavily on their shoulders for a few years now.
What was the last one? 2002?
Dan?
Yeah. It's insane now to think about it, isn't it? That they go 12 years, without it.
Which in itself is insane to think that not going 13 years or going... If we were to say right now, Real Madrid won't win the Champions League in the next 13 years, you'd go, they will. But that shows you their mental level in this, because it's a bloody hard thing to win.
And I can't even really remember at the time, or even all these look backs as well, thinking, God, Real Madrid haven't won this again. It's never really been a factor in my head. There's just been so many other things going on. But I think it's funny that we all speak about this, and you speak about this quite a bit, don't you, Martyn, about when you achieve something that a club wants to achieve or has wanted to achieve for a set amount of time, there can be a release of pressure that can then be detrimental, or it can then be decisive in terms of what you do next. It goes two ways. Most things do. That's maybe not that big a take. But I think in Madrid's case, it was very unlikely that a club like that is going to say, oh, great, we got the 10th. We've not won for 12 years. Happy days. See you in another 12 years. I don't think it was going to be absolutely stick on that in the next 5 years they would win 4 out of 5. That was absolutely unprecedented, considering no one had even won it twice. So it's just a big team mentality, and I think throughout this 25, what we covered, 30 years almost now, I think that's the thing that has shown for me for Madrid, that they might not be there every single year. There might be chaos behind the scenes. They might sack managers that win the Champions League and sack them the next day, etc. But undoubtedly, they're the star of the show in terms of getting the big shiny thing over the line, and they'll only go on and show that more, I think, certainly in the next few years. And then even as we're talking just now, there's been countless examples of that being the case still another 10, 12 years on.
Might feel like 30 years, but 22 years from...
Was it?
1992, 93, or 22 seasons. And it is going to change. No one had retained this thing in the Champions League era. And in 2017 it would be, wouldn't it? Real Madrid would retain it and then retain it again, of course. And they pick up more. That's a different era, one that, who knows, we may return to way down the track. But it's been fun. It's been great remembering and piecing together some big threads over these 2 decades. But as Sky were almost in tears as they said farewell to the Champions League on this night in Lisbon and handed over to BT, so we will too. But we will be back, listeners, for a short epilogue and I guess try to pull together some of those threads, what we've learned, what we've enjoyed over the course of the piece. But thank you, David.
Thank you, guys. I had invited Gary Cottrell from Sky to come and do a party popper at this point, but it must have got lost in the mail.
Thank you, Adam, for all your work breaking down and explaining why things happened as they did.
Thank you. It's been good fun. I'm looking forward to a short break and getting back into it with the Premier League. But thank you. It's been great. And thank you to everyone who has listened from the start a long 18 months ago.
Yep, listeners, we're going back to 92-93, a whole new ball game, and it's live, the history of the EP coming soon. But thank you for all the interaction over the course of this series. It's been a lot of fun. We hope you enjoy. Until next time, bye for now. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts and breakdowns dropping every other day.